There comes a moment in life when everything seems to fall out of control, when what you once believed begins to be challenged, and even when God is acting, the people around you misinterpret everything. And then a question arises that can completely change your destiny. Would you recognize God working in your life, or would you confuse the truth with what feels more comfortable to believe? If this kind of content strengthens your faith, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and hit the like button, because that helps this message reach more people. Reading of the day, a reading from the book of the Acts of the Apostles, 14:5-18. In those days, in Iconium, both Gentiles and Jews, together with their leaders, decided to attack and stone Paul and Barnabas. When they learned of this, Paul and Barnabas fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the surrounding region. There they continued to proclaim the gospel. In Lystra, there was a man crippled in his feet, lame from birth, who had never walked. He listened to Paul speaking. Paul looked intently at him, and, seeing that he had faith to be healed, said in a loud voice, "Stand upright on your feet." The man jumped up and began to walk. When the crowd saw what Paul had done, they shouted in the Lycaonian language, "The gods have come down to us in human form." They called Barnabas Zeus, and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. The priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought bulls and garlands to the gates, and wanted to offer sacrifice with the crowds. When the apostles, Barnabas and Paul, heard of this, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, shouting, "Men, why are you doing this? We are of the same nature as you, human beings." We proclaim to you the good news, that you should turn from these worthless idols, to the living God, who made heaven and earth and sea and all that is in them. In past generations, he allowed all nations to go their own ways, yet he did not leave himself without witness, for he did good by giving you rains from heaven and fruitful seasons, providing food and filling your hearts with joy. Even with these words, they scarcely restrained the crowd from offering sacrifice to them. Gospel of the Day, a reading from the Holy Gospel, according to John 14:21-26. At that time, Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever has my commandments, and keeps them, is the one who loves me, and whoever loves me, will be loved by my Father, and I will love him, and reveal myself to him." Judas note, the Iscariot said to him, "Master, then what happened, that you will reveal yourself to us, and not to the world?" Jesus answered and said to him, "Whoever loves me will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our dwelling with him. Whoever does not love me, does not keep my words. Yet the word you hear is not mine but that of the Father who sent me. I have told you this, while I am with you." The Advocate, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name. He will teach you everything, and remind you of all that I told you. The Gospel of the Lord. The words of the popes, in today's Gospel. Jesus says, "Whoever receives my commandments and keeps them, is the one who loves me. And whoever loves me, will be loved by my Father, and I will love him, and reveal myself to him." v21. It is love that introduces us to the knowledge of Jesus, thanks to the action of this Advocate whom Jesus has sent us, namely, the Holy Spirit. Love for God, and for neighbor, is the greatest commandment of the Gospel. Today, the Lord calls us to respond generously to the evangelical vocation of love, placing God at the center of our lives, and dedicating ourselves to the service of our brothers and sisters, especially those most in need of help and consolation. If there is one attitude that is never easy or obvious, even for a Christian community, It is precisely knowing how to love one another and to desire each other's good, following the example of the Lord, and with His grace. Every day, we must learn the art of loving. Listen to this. Every day we must learn the art of loving. Every day we must patiently follow the school of Christ. Every day we must forgive and look to Jesus. And this with the help of this advocate, this consoler, whom Jesus has sent us, who is the Holy Spirit. Pope Francis, Regina Coeli, May 21st, 2017. Now, after hearing all of this, the tension of this story begins to reveal itself more deeply. Paul and Barnabas were persecuted, rejected, and almost killed. But when a miracle finally happens before everyone's eyes, what should lead to conversion instead leads to confusion. The crowd does not recognize the true God, and instead chooses to turn men into false gods. This reveals something unsettling. Not everyone who sees a miracle is willing to accept the truth, and perhaps this is closer to our reality than it seems. How many times does God act, respond, and open doors, yet a person still chooses to interpret everything in their own way, creating explanations that do not require a change of life? It is easier to adapt God to one's own will than to truly convert. Paul and Barnabas tear their garments because they understand the danger of that moment. It was not just a mistake, it was a spiritual deviation. They do not accept glory, they do not negotiate the truth, and they do not take advantage of the situation. They interrupt everything to point to God. That requires courage, because the truth is not always pleasing. In the Gospel, Jesus makes it clear that it is not enough to hear, it is not enough to admire, and it is not enough to feel something momentary. To love God means to keep His word, to live what He teaches, and to allow Him to transform one's life completely. And that requires a decision. The Holy Spirit is promised as the one who guides, teaches, and reminds, but He does not force anyone. He leads those who are willing to obey. And here's the central point. Faith is not emotion, it is a daily choice. The question now returns with greater intensity. Are you willing to live the truth, even when it demands change? Or do you prefer a comfortable faith that transforms nothing? Today's story shows that it is possible to stand before a miracle and still not convert. It shows that it is possible to hear the truth and still ignore it. But it also shows that those who choose to remain faithful, even in the midst of confusion, are truly guided by God. And now it is no longer about Paul, Barnabas, or that crowd. It is about you. About your decision today, about what you will do with what you have just heard. If Jesus promises to dwell in those who love Him and keep His word, then faith stops being something distant and becomes something alive within you, and that changes everything. If this message spoke to you, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and hit the like button, because your decision can also help this message transform other lives.